A stray cat in my neighborhood leaves gifts on my porch. A story by no-snail. 3 weeks ago, I signed the papers for a home in an unfamiliar neighborhood. After months of scouring listings online and taking tours every week, only to have my applications rejected, I felt compelled to take the first one that was offered to me. The house isn't anyone's dream home, but it's a home. It's a small, one-story house in a desperate need for a new coat of paint, but it sits nestled amongst a sea of suburban white picket fence homes. My first day in the new house was spent moving boxes from the moving truck to the house. Occasionally, I would take short rests that consisted of collapsing on the front porch and chugging down a full bottle of water. During one of these breaks, I sat trying to catch my breath, with my back against a pile of boxes. I watched while the sky turned a deep orange with the sun slowly setting behind the houses around me. I felt I could have sat there all evening, but my moment of peace was interrupted by the growl of my stomach. I had forgotten to eat for the entire day. I went inside to search for the stack of boxes labeled kitchen, and I returned to the porch 20 minutes later with a tuna sandwich. Once I made it back outside, it was already dark. I sighed with a mixture of fatigue and disappointment for missing the full sunset, but took a seat on the porch to eat my sandwich nonetheless. As I ate, my exhaustion hit me like a ton of bricks. I found myself wishing that my new neighbors were both buff and helpful, and that they'd show up right then and offer me a hand. Only a moment later, I thought my wish had come true as I caught a glimpse of movement in the edge of my vision. However, when I turned to look, there was no one there. I wondered if I should be frightened, sitting in the darkness of the night, alone, defenseless in a brand new neighborhood. If someone were creeping up on me, I was far too drained to fight back. Luckily, I didn't have to consider this for too long. From the spot where I had seen movement, 2 tiny yellow eyes faded into my view from the inky background. I squinted, but it seemed that my vision was taking quite some time to adjust. The owner of the eyes was a mangy tabby cat, but with the surrounding darkness, it almost looked as if its body faded into existence right in front of me. I reached out a hand to see if it was friendly, and the cat took several cautious steps towards me before stopping and letting out a desperate meow. "What is it?" I asked out loud. "What do you need?" Its eyes shifted. I followed them to the tuna sandwich in my hand. "Ah," I thought, "of course." I pulled a piece of the corner of my sandwich and held it out for the cat to take. It took several more steps forward, bridging the gap between us, and accepted my offering. I held out an empty hand for a pet, but the cat continued to eyeball my sandwich. It only had a few bites left, but I could always make another, I rationalized. I set the sandwich down on the ground. The cat pushed his head into my hand as a thank you, I suppose, and then took off with the rest of my dinner. I didn't make another sandwich, and I went to bed a little hungry but happy to have made a first friend in the new place. The next morning, I woke up and decided to get straight to work. Not half an hour after opening my eyes was I at the front door, ready to start moving boxes. However, when I opened my front door, I was greeted with what I could only describe as a bad omen. There was a large black raven laying dead on my doorstep. Its wings were mangled out of shape and its legs were twisted up in the most horrific way. One of its eyes hung loosely out of its pocket, while the other appeared to be gouged out completely. Beneath it was a seemingly fresh pool of blood, with a trail that led out of my porch and disappeared into the grass. I somehow resisted the instinctive urge to vomit. What kind of sick prank is this? My thoughts raced. Hazing the new neighbor, maybe? The pits in my stomach grew as I imagined my psycho neighbors coming up with this plan, thinking it was funny. The world started to spin around me, and just as I thought I might fall over, the cat from last night made its way into my field of vision, seemingly out of thin air, just like before. I brushed it off as my dizziness getting the better of me. I composed myself before asking out loud, "You did this?" The cat responded with a meow, as if it could perfectly understand me. "It's a gift?" I asked. The cat meowed again, almost looking pleased with itself. I let out a long sigh, which turned into a chuckle, then a full fit of laughter. "Well," I wiped my eyes, "you're welcome." The cat moved towards me and brushed against my leg. I reached down to give it a pet, but it quickly slipped past me into my house. I considered whether I should deal with that or the bird first, but as I looked back up, I was greeted with the sight of a woman standing on the sidewalk in front of my house, looking absolutely mortified. The first thing I noticed about the woman was that she looked exactly how I pictured my neighbors to look. Her blonde hair was curled to perfection at the ends, falling just below her shiny pearl earrings that matched her necklace. She had one hand over her mouth in shock. I could see her fingers adorned with several expensive-looking rings, and even her glistening red nail polish looked like it would break my bank. My silent fixation was broken by her shriek, "Oh my God!" she let out. "That filthy thing just ran into your house." I looked behind me. The cat had long disappeared behind me. I looked back at her. "You mean the cat?" I asked. "Who talks that way about a cat?" I wondered. Her expression shifted into one of disgust. Now she was looking directly at me. "Stray cat," she corrected me. "A filthy stray animal, and it's in your house." Her eyes fell down to the dead bird at my feet. "And it looks like you've made it your friend," she scoffed. Now, I was feeling frustrated. I wasn't even finished moving in yet, and I was already getting a bad reputation with the neighbors. I opened my mouth to respond to her, but she cut me off just before I could speak. "Look, you can hang out with whatever grimy creatures you want. Just don't bring it over to my house, okay?" I couldn't conjure an answer in time before she just turned and walked off down the sidewalk. I got some paper towels, moved the bird to the outside trash, and then decided to put off the rest of the moving until tomorrow. I unpacked my TV and spent the rest of my day inside, relaxing, trying to brush off the bad start of the week. I never found the cats inside my house, but the next morning, I opened the front door to discover yet another gift. This time, I was greeted with a beautiful pearl necklace. My mind immediately connected it back to the one my neighbor had been wearing. I picked it up and examined it closely. It was so much shinier up close. I instinctively glanced around for the stray cat, and of course, I found it standing nearby. "Did you steal this?" I asked out loud, barely managing to hold down my laughter. The cat once again brushed up against one of my legs. This time, when I reached down, it let me pet it. As my hand stroked through its fur, I had the thought that it was so much softer than I expected. I wanted to keep petting, but the cat slipped out of my reach just as soon as it had slid in. "I appreciate the gesture," I told the cat, "but I'm going to return this now." If I didn't know any better, I'd say the cat looked disappointed. I felt the need to reassure it. "Really, I'm glad I made at least one friend so far." The cat must have been satisfied with that answer, because it gave me a one delighted meow and made its way off the porch. Later that day, I went over to my neighbor's house to return the necklace. I felt anxious on the walk over and the entire time standing on the porch, but to my relief, she never came to the door. I decided to wrap up the necklace and leave it on the porch with a note. Several days passed with no new gifts or happenings. However, one night while taking out the trash, I noticed that my neighbor never retrieved the necklace or the note from her porch. I considered that maybe she didn't want it back after I'd handled it, but I decided I would still check in with her in the morning. Well, morning came, but I never got to check in with my neighbor. When I woke up earlier than usual and opened my front door, the stray cat was pulling something onto my porch, perhaps another gift. I waited a moment so I could get a good look, but quickly wished I hadn't. I wanted to slam my front door shut, but my trembling arms wouldn't allow it. I was overcome with the same sick feeling of terror from the first gift that the stray cat had brought me, but this time it was much deeper. On the ground at my feet was a severed human hand, each finger adorned with expensive-looking rings and bright red, glistening nail polish.